Good morning. I'll convene the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. This is the December 5th, our regular meeting. Welcome to Harris Hall. Thanks for being here this morning. We have a good turnout, Mr. Mokraheski, of people who I presume are here for public testimony. I'll get directly into that item on our agenda. After any adjustments to the agenda, do we have any?
We don't. I know there's one request that commissioners have, but staff don't have any changes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would just like to request that we move Public Works item 10D, the Parks Levy Report, to next week's agenda.
Item 10D pulled from today's agenda and moved into next week's agenda. Any objections?
Just in the interest of time management and for time management. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. Then we will move item 10D, and that will be the Parks Levy will be covered in the December 12th meeting. Further adjustments to the agenda? I'm seeing none. Do we have any emergency business, Mr. McRice?
No, we do not.
To the board? We have none. Then we'll go right into public comments. And I'm going to read our preamble that we publish with public comments. Speakers will be taken in the order in which they sign up and will be limited to 3 minutes per public comment. If the number wishing to testify exceeds 10 speakers, additional speakers may be allowed if the chair determines that time permits, or may be taken at a later time. When there's an additional opportunity for public comment on the afternoon, speakers will only be permitted to offer public comment on a specific topic once on the same day. So I'm going to address that. We're going to go beyond 10. As many people who wish to speak today will be allowed to speak, no matter how long it takes. However, the 3 minutes will be reduced to 2 minutes today for public testimony, both in person at Harris Hall and online. We'll entertain public testimony from people in person first, and then online, and then I'll come back to Harris Hall to see if anyone else wishes to testify. We do have a pretty robust sign-up sheet already, which is continuing to grow. If you have any written comments, you can, at any time, you can forward written comments to the Board of County Commissioners. So with that, I'll move directly into public comments. I'll call the first speaker and followed by the speaker on deck. If you would step to the microphone, identify yourself, keep an eye on the clock, which will be to my left, directly in front of you, and that will count down from 2 minutes. At 2 minutes, I'll ask you to move along so the next speaker can address the Board of County Commissioners. So with that, excuse me, we'll begin with Anna Colwell, who will be followed by Tiffany Edwards. Ms. Colwell, will you step to the mic, identify yourself, and your 2 minutes will begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for that. I'm here on behalf of Beyond Toxics, which is a local nonprofit here in Eugene, Oregon. Again, my name is Anna Colwell. I am the Environmental Justice Policy Manager for Non-Toxics, as well as a resident of Eugene. On behalf of Beyond Toxics, we urge the Board of County Commissioners to approve the proposed IMRF, Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility project. Approving the IMRF would give Lane County the opportunity to take advantage of the modern efficient waste management technology of anaerobic digestion to reduce waste and stop the harmful methane release into the atmosphere. Investing in this facility now is a decision that will preserve the county's asset, the Short Mountain landfill, for generations to come. Additionally, by acting quickly to approve the IMRF, the county will be able to take advantage of federal funding that is available now and will not be available in the coming year. Why Lane County needs the IMRF. The IMRF will provide an alternative to traditional landfilling. The IMRF will enhance the county's ability to sort all arriving waste to the Short Mountain landfill and divert organic waste from going to the landfill. For example, an estimated 25 to 40% of all food produced or imported for consumption in the U.S. is never actually eaten. In Oregon, for example, the food contributes close to 15% of our consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions. And food waste is just one of the many types of municipal waste products the biodigester would manage. As Lane County continues to grow, our landfills will continue to be filled, creating unwanted pressure to expand the footprint of this already significantly large facility. The need to have an alternative solution to mitigate the volume of waste is evident. The proposed IMRF facility will be able to provide an alternative to overflowing landfills. I can cut this short because I'm running out of time. Finally, the IMRF is an investment that we are making for future children of Lane County, as they will be the ones who must bear the cost of creating a new landfill and the increased methane in the atmosphere. It is for them that we must do this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Colwell. Tiffany Edwards will be followed by John Profit.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Tiffany Edwards with the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to offer a few thoughts as you're moving towards a decision later today on the IMRF. In the last few weeks, there's been a lot said publicly and privately about this project, just as there have been strong support from many constituencies. The current participant businesses of waste management systems, from haulers to recyclers to local utilities, have expressed opposition, which is understandable if it impacts their current business model. The Eugene Chamber has over 1,200 members who stand to be impacted differently from policy decisions. That said, the Chamber's mission is to promote economic vibrancy that drives opportunity. This is our focus, and it's why the Chamber takes a step back and evaluates these public infrastructure projects by considering the overall long-term impacts, what brings the greatest benefit to the community, and at what cost. And we constantly prioritize that over the impact to any one business or sector. Lane County initiated this project with several goals in mind, as outlined in your 3-year strategic plan. This public-private partnership seeks out private investment to modernize our waste system, reduce our landfill emissions, and extend the life of Short Mountain, focusing on the intersection of economic development, equity, and the environment. If this is the objective of the county, the Eugene Chamber would hope that this can be done in a way that provides the best return on the community's $35 million portion of this investment. With $100 million in private investment going towards this strategic priority, we also know this project will create jobs, generate economic activity, and support innovative technologies developed by a local company. The $35 million price tag is to be paid by the businesses and households that generate waste, who pay to dispose of it at a rate proportionate to what they generate. At a total cost that keeps the county competitive at a time when rates for everything are predictably increasing. And to the extent of the elements of this project make it competitive for additional grant support, it is feasible to expect to reduce the county's obligation even further. The contract is constructed in a way that, because it doesn't regulate flow control, preserves flexibility to the haulers. The variabilities with licensing and franchise agreements between cities probably necessitates some mitigation, but likely a workable solution. I've read and digested every talking point, every counterpoint, and seen a fair amount of inaccuracies and data points that favor one narrative. This project isn't without cost, and it isn't without controversy, but $100 million of private investment by a local company merits strong consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards.
Thank you.
And I granted a little bit of latitude on that public comment. I'll be a little tighter on the 2 minutes. Please, if you've written for 3 minutes, take this time to adjust it down to a 2-minute testimony, please.
Hi, I'm John
Prophet, who will be followed by Heidi Ringus.
I'm here for, I don't know, the 10th, 12th, 15th time. I came first on the 27th of June. I've asked you people to help me. I've heard nothing, nothing at all. I paid the $1,500 for the hearing because they're going to take my land like I told you they would on the 27th of June. The hearing officer just repeated everything that LMD had to say, didn't listen or look to a single document, which is all their records, but they decide it has nothing to do with it. And I don't even know what else to say. They will not stop. They are 100% out of control. None of them know what they're actually doing. They're just pursuing a narrative of ruining everyone's life. I want to go back to sleeping at night. Of course, I kind of like to do it in my own bed, but they vindictively decided my house was unsafe after 17 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prophet. Heidi Ringus will be followed by Charles Kimball.
Hi. My name's Heidi Ringus. So here's my new favorite one. Now they're telling us, oh, hello, hi, I'm up here. Thanks. Now they're telling us the records are not the records. They're using the records to prosecute John, but when we try to use the records to defend ourselves, the records are not the records. That's my favorite, yeah. Apparently they are just a tool for determining due dates, assigning work to staff, and for project assignment management, so other members of staff can identify who might be appropriate staff member to contact for information. While this is publicly viewable, the tool is not indicative of official permit approvals. For construction, I'm like, okay, really? So why would you make that public information? to utterly and totally baffle and confuse the people working on the project if it's, you know, if what it says is not what it means. You know, that's just really stupid. And so, you know, yeah, and I'm running out of time. Anyway, I will submit all this to you. Please, please read this, because it is utterly ridiculous that this man found for LMD in the wake of this evidence, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ringus. Charles Kimball will be followed by Ron Davis.
Well, that's a minute I'll never get back. Thank you, Chairman Farr and Commissioners. I'm Charles Kimball, Board President at Emerald PUD, and I'm here to speak on behalf of our entire elected board. We're going straight to bullet points. In every meeting that you've held on this issue, you've asked the question, have we sought feedback from the key stakeholders? Any idea that Emerald is not a key stakeholder in any discussion concerning Short Mountain is sort of mind-boggling. Metrics for what we've accomplished over 30 years out there. 16 billion cubic feet of methane captured and destroyed, creating 800 million kilowatt hours of energy for Emerald's 50,000 Lane County citizens. We've invested tens of millions of dollars over that 30-year span, increasing our Short Mountain budget to $1.2 million a year since 2018 to increase our capture rate to 70%. If there's any question about the veracity of that number, we would suggest that folks read the entire engineering report that we provided rather than just a single graph. Commissioners, I think we all know it's about the gas. It's the engine that funds our efforts at Short Mountain, and it's a key part of the IMRF. So what are the immediate impacts to Emerald if this goes forward? With a 20 to 30% reduction in gas volume at Short Mountain, Emerald's ratepayers will cost about $1 million per year. Stated another way, over a 20-year span, Emerald's ratepayers alone would contribute $20 million to the IMRF proposal. It's taking from Peter to pay Paul. There's no other way to view it. The second impact would be that we will almost certainly cancel the $30 million infrastructure upgrade that we've already authorized out there to increase our generation capacity by 50%. It's just not going to pencil out. We know you have a tough job today, and we certainly don't want to create conflict with the county, but we can't ignore the repercussions to our ratepayers.
Thank you.
You have a choice today to either keep that gas in Lane County for the benefit of Lane County citizens or inject it into a pipeline and send it off somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kimball. Ron Davis will be followed by Steve Olivier.
Hello, I'm Ron Davis. I'm the Vice President of the Emerald Peoples Utility District, and I've been on that board for over 20 years. And we have helped Lane County for decades as far as capturing methane gas and using it for local use. And we want to extend that use so that we can use it for shaving peaks when we have the need locally for electric needs. The flip side of it is you guys are looking at a proposal which would cost over $100 million, and it's going to impact the ratepayers and the people who pay their taxes here in Lane County, and you were supposed to represent their best interests. However, this particular program that you're talking about, you did not contact Emerald about it, how we could help, so you get another look, and it's not gonna benefit the ratepayers and the taxpayers here. It's gonna cost us money, and who's gonna win? A private corporation who puts together this thing, and also then they're gonna sell the gas to Northwest Natural Gas, which is going to profit them. So let's look at taking care of the people first and not these corporations. And we've already, Emerald's already been doing this for decades and working out, and we're at a process where we're trying to improve it even more, and you're in the process of taking away our resources. So please do the right thing and support the people.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Steve Olivier will be followed by Keith Baskett.
I have a handout.
You can set it right there, Mr. Olivier. Thank you.
Steve Olivier. I'm the owner, founder, publisher of Eugene Magazine for 18 years now. And my most recent business venture here is SOS, I call it, Stephen Olivier's Sewage and Solid Waste and Garbage Grinding / Refuse Incineration Corporation of downtown Marcola, Oregon. So about 4 years ago, I purchased the old elementary school in Marcola, Oregon when they built a new one. The old elementary school is located in downtown Marcola. That said, the school is, and its 5 lots are zoned rural public facility, though they're owned by a private citizen, myself and my wife. I'm coming here today with an emergency matter on behalf of the citizens and civilians of the Mohawk Valley, namely downtown Marcola, because although I have a dream of starting this new business, SOS, Steve Olivier's Sewage and Solid Waste and Garbage Grinding / Refuse Incineration Corporation of downtown Marcola, Oregon, trademark name, I am willing to sacrifice this dream for the constituents of the Mohawk Valley and downtown Marcola because though I plan to make a lot of money and it's legally allowable in the rural public facility zone for me to go ahead and just start this business, every constituent in Marcola has stood up in defiance of my legal right to do so, and they've signed a petition to keep me from exercising my legal right to start this business. And so I am going to give you an opportunity to do the right thing in the name of what the lane management of the people that deal with putting the acronyms on the squares on the map. I am giving you the opportunity to do what's right for the people of Marcola and what's right for, the Lane County Land Use Management Division, whatever they call that, what they were started for, and deny me this and change the zoning because it would cost me, they're telling me $150,000, $30,000 per lot, $150,000 in 3 years to change the zoning to rural residential so that other individuals may build family homes in downtown Marcola. But they're there to protect the community. So they're gonna allow me to do this Sewage and Solid Waste and Garbage Grinding / Refuse Incineration Corporation because that's legally allowable by the tablet Lane County 1629423GT E and T. I also plan on having a helipad there, as is also allowable next to the porta potty storage area that I have. So I'm asking you to do the right thing, and I'm giving you the opportunity right now to do the right thing for the people of Marcola, and in an emergency situation, deny me from doing my dream, my business, SOS.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Olivier. Next person up is Emily Heilbrunn. Keith Baskett will be followed by
So is
Emily
that a yes
Heilbrunn.
or a no on the SOS business?
We don't respond to testimony that's given in the morning until after the entire body of testimony, Mr.
And where do I go for my response?
You can, if there's going to be a response, it will be following the entire body of testimony, which we have probably at least an hour of testimony at this point ahead of us. So
Grateful for your time and your service to the community.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, friends.
Keith Baskett will be followed by Emily Heilbrunn.
Hi, Keith Baskett.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to talk quick, 3 minutes down to 2. I have 2 subjects regarding the McKenzie River. First one is, I'm not sure if the council knows or in Heather Buck's area, they choose to ignore, but the McKenzie River, the homeless under the bridge, there's 30 to 50 people, RVs, tents, cars. The flood waters have risen and it's surrounding those. The park rec wouldn't allow them to stay in Armitage, so they moved them under the bridge till Thanksgiving. Nothing happened. Now they say they can stay there till January 1st. Not sure what's going on. Nonprofits tried to pay Parks and Recs. They said no. Nonprofits have been bringing them supplies under the bridge, keeping them there. The homeless broke through the gate and the barrier, busted the locks, busted the gate. They were circumventing the boulders down there. We thought the river was such a big deal. Is that like hypocrisy, I think? There's massive garbage piles. There's feces. People, I've seen them peeing in the river right there. There's sewage is dumping out of the RVs right into the river. It's disgusting. Yet Parks, Sheriff, this council does absolutely nothing. The McKenzie River Cleanup is a group we do that's along McKenzie View Drive, and we spend every year cleaning up, and this is just a fraction of what we've cleaned compared to the piles of garbage that is sitting down there floating in the river right now. Go look, it's disgusting. There's many folks that are just out of their minds angry about all this, the blatant disregard for the river that we all thought was so important. It's just another chess piece in the political game. Second is my personal story. I'm going to give you a little bit. I'll be here several times explaining the whole thing. I have a parcel of land on the McKenzie River, just about 3/4 miles east of Armitage. My goal was to build a small home, retire there. I'm an active business owner in the community for over 30 years. Before I purchased, I did my due diligence and determined that I had a plan and it would work there. The property is completely in a floodway, but several sections of that is well above the 100-year floodplain level, which makes it okay for me to build. If I have a hydraulic engineer company, which I hired, they helped me develop a plan. Before I did anything,
Thank you for your public comment.
Wow.
We will now take our next speaker.
Okay. Anyway, I'll be back to tell you more.
Thank you, Mr. Baskett. Emily Heilbrunn will be followed by Chris Kayad.
Good morning. My name is Emily Heilbrunn, and I live in Eugene. I'm here to urge you to vote to approve the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility. This project will keep 80 tons per year of recyclables and organic waste out of the landfill, extending its life by 20 years. It will also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, the facility will produce renewable natural gas by converting organic waste into fuels that can be used in public transportation fleets. It will also create numerous jobs. The amount by which residential garbage rates will increase is reasonable. All in all, this is an investment which I think Lane County should make. The climate is truly in crisis, but it is not too late to take action that will make a difference. You have a chance to do so by voting to approve the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Heilbrunn. Next is Chris Cad, who will be followed by Bridget Homek.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. My name is Chris Carr.
Thank you.
With Sanipac. Just have a few questions I believe would be beneficial for the Commissioners to receive some clarity on. Are there other large solid waste projects in the pipeline? Can the county staff provide the anticipated increases to tip fees from those to the people to have an idea of the total impact of all projects combined? 2, can the county staff please clarify the $35 million bond with a 7.5% interest rate will have impact on future tip fee increases? The cost of the bond has not been part of the tip fee discussion so far. 3, has the county engaged a third party experienced in these types of facility contracts to examine the performance requirements? Couple examples: the facility is only guaranteeing, 35.5% diversion rate. In my understanding, this is a low bar. The RFP response stated the facility would have a 49% diversion rate. What makes the 35% number even more concerning is the list of materials that won't be counted against the number that includes cardboard or paper that's wet, crumpled, or contaminated. This seems there were some very broad loopholes on the performance of the facility, given that we live in such a wet climate and trash is basically all compacted together. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Bridget Hauk will be followed by Todd Hauk.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Bridget Hauk, and I live in the Lane County area, and I have lived here for my entire adult life, and I have raised my family here and have cared for my elders in this community. I have built my career and worked at International Paper for at least 25 years. I do not support this IMRF project. I believe that this project turns a blind eye to the negative impact that it will have on the citizens of this community. My family, my elders, your family, and your elders. I believe that the scope of this project is too broad. We have the opportunity and the obligation as a community to focus our attention on projects that have a more immediate need and a direct impact on our community.
Our citizens are struggling with inflation right now, and we are living in a time where fixed budgets are becoming even more strained with these inflated costs. This is not the time for a large project that will continue to drive up the costs for our citizens and affect local jobs like mine and so many others. I do not think that this IMERF project is right for our community at this time, and I ask the commissioners not to support it. Thank you for your time, and I do not envy your decision.
Thank you, Ms. Hauk. Tom Hauk will be followed by Travis St. Clair.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Todd Hauk. I grew up, I went to school, I've raised a family in this community. I don't believe the IMERF project is the best use of the county resources at this time. I feel that projects such as the leachate pipeline would be a better serve the residents of Lane County at this time. The county should focus on existing infrastructure. This project simply replaces what already exists. The county should instead assess what the current infrastructure is and the capacity to find more ways to increase recovery at no cost to county taxpayers. I also think that this will create hardships on current businesses and jobs. I don't support the IMERF project as it is, and I urge the commissioners not to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hauk. Travis St. Clair will be followed by Jason Brezina.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Travis St. Clair, born here in Oregon, and I've lived in Lane County since you could actually catch the bus for a dime on the weekends. So it's a number of years. I'm here to oppose the IMERF proposal. I think that there is already a number of very important projects that the county has in the pipeline that should take should be in front of this. Excuse me for jumping around a bit, but I'm kind of trying to adjust to the time change there. For the last 25 years, I've worked in the recycling industry, and we have done a tremendous amount of working towards sustainability and such with my company and trying to achieve the goals. We recognize climate change is a huge issue. This career has actually helped me raise my children and given me as a single father the social support of these people that I've worked with for 25 years. And my son is now joining in. He just turned 21 yesterday, and he has started his career in recycling. It's done very well for my family and support of this community. I've heard a lot of comments that come to mind and change the remainder of what I was going to speak to. Things like EPUD rates. You know, I live in Cresswell. You know, the impacts there. And oftentimes I've heard people refer to, well, it's a small price for your garbage container for the residential. But let's not forget, when you start talking institutions and you start talking commercial, who ultimately pays for that increase? Those are some substantial increases. And it's the customers, the people that go and see these businesses. It's the Eugene Toy and Hobby. It's the Cresswell Bakery. It's these small local folks that are either going to have to absorb it or pass it on. And with all of the inflation, all the increased costs, is this really the right decision? I'm all for sustainability. I just don't know that at this cost this is the right decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you, Mr. St. Clair. Next is Jason Brezina, followed by Gary Person.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jason Brezina. I'm a lifelong resident of Lane County. My family lives here and have lived here for generations. For over 30 years, I've been part of the local recycling community, hoping to reduce landfill waste and supporting our community. I am not in favor of the IMERF project at this time because I feel there are too many important questions left unanswered. I don't believe that there's been enough community involvement. There's too much wishful thinking about the expected results. There is already enough capacity relative to the commingled processing in Oregon, and the IMERF project would place undue hardships on existing facilities, undermining our entire system rather than improving it. I share the county's commitment for improved sustainability, and I encourage the further exploration of solutions that separate the commingled recycling from the organics part of the project to expand the lifespan of the landfill. I ask the commissioners not to support this project until corrective measures are made to ensure that jobs like mine are not impacted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Perzina. Carrie Person will be followed by Sonia Carlson.
Morning, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kerry Parson. I've been a lifelong resident of Lane County. I've been with International Paper for 25 years. I'm an operations manager there. And I understand the future, and I understand the looking out for our community and our environment is the utmost, all of our responsibility. And I understand that the county's looking in the same respect, and I respect that. But right now is not the time to put in a MRF that simply isn't needed at this time. There's other options. The county needs to inform the public more, and we need more facts of what's going on here, okay? I appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Next is Sonia Carlson, who will be followed by Sam Miller. Commissioner Carlson.
Thank you. Chair Farr and Commissioners, I'm Sonia Carlson, the Interim Executive Director of BRING. I'm here to express BRING's support for the proposed IMRF. As you may know, BRING has been a champion of recycling, waste reduction, and reuse for over 50 years. During that time, we've been partners with Lane County to provide education services to children through age-appropriate classroom lessons and tours, including the landfill. To that end, the IMRF provides opportunities for continued and expanded partnership. The IMRF and Education Center are a step in the right direction towards recovering materials, extending the life of our landfill, and further educating our community about waste reduction. We should be conservative in how we use our community's limited resources. Obtaining high-quality materials from the waste stream remains contingent on effective sorting of organics, recyclables, and garbage in homes and businesses. That won't change. Continuous education is essential to ensure that those willing to separate materials are well-informed on proper procedures. Nevertheless, we must acknowledge the reality that despite extensive education efforts, some individuals will never choose to sort materials unless mandated to do so. And believing that all 12 cities in Lane County have the political willpower to impose mandates akin to California's is overly optimistic. This project stands as the Commissioner's most significant lever for making a substantial impact. When undertaking any major project, it is essential to thoroughly analyze contract, financial, and market risks. However, the $100 million investment by BHS, or their skin in the game, if you will, underscores their commitment to the project's long-term success. Despite risks, the benefits are noteworthy, including the creation of blue-collar construction jobs and high-paying positions that utilize AI for safe sorting. Transforming methane from a pollutant into a valuable energy resource, and leveraging $35 million to attract an additional $115 million in investment. Could we replicate this level of support for competing projects with similar goals? As an elected policymaker myself, I empathize with the challenging decisions you face and commend the due diligence you've conducted on the IMRF project. Forward-thinking decisions, especially those with unknowns, are inherently challenging, yet crucial for future generations.
Thank you for your public comment.
Okay, I'll send the rest of my testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlson. Sam Miller will be followed by Andrew Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Samuel Miller. I'm the owner of Apex Recycling and Disposal here in Eugene. I've been a resident and worked in the waste industry in this county for 44 years. I am opposed to the mixed waste processing facility that Lane County Waste Management has proposed. The main reason right now not to build such a facility is it's unnecessary, since the state of Oregon is already in the process of implementing the Recycling Modernization Act that it passed 2 years ago. This law was enacted to revise the markets for recycling in the state precisely to enhance the current recycling programs to further increase recovery at a grassroots level in infrastructure that already existed so that local governments could meet state diversion goals. How much will the RMA cost citizens in this county? Nothing. No obligation of debt. Why? Because it is going to hold producers accountable and financially responsible for recycling the products they put into the marketplace. This has been done in the past with electronics in 2010. Also, I believe more time is needed to study the actual need for this facility. There has been no mention of the interest expense associated with the $35 million bond that is needed to purchase the property. The interest expense would run at least $1.7 million a year on top of payments of principal. The study completed by Onward Eugene of the financial impact of the IMERS facility did not include any potential negative costs or effects, but only things that were termed economic benefit. Why would the county move forward on such a complex and massive project without considering all the positive and the negative aspects? In terms of recycling organics, programs already exist in the city of Eugene and Springfield for recycling yard debris and food waste. Food waste is included in the city of Eugene. We are responsible for educating people in these things, and we do a good job of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next is Andrew Smith, will be followed by Brian White. Chief Smith, welcome to Harris Hall.
Thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. I think at this point I have the easiest job in the room, so that feels great. I'm actually just here today to offer our appreciation to you as a Board of Commissioners for your support and your efforts over the last months to help us get to this point. Here in just a little while, when you finish your public comment during your consent agenda, you will officially order into existence a fire district that will change the lives of our community once and for all. This has been an effort that's taken 10 years to get to this point. This is an effort that will change the fire protection services for our community. This is an effort that will provide fire protection to nearly 88 properties, homes, and families that currently don't have fire protection, all of which will be stamped here in less than an hour. That's a monumentous moment for our community, for our organization, and it's something that's going to change the future of our organization as we move forward. This is just opening the door to us hiring additional staff for our fire protection, and it's opening the door for us to build a new fire station in the community of Pleasant Hill, which has been a desperate need for years. So specifically, we'd like to thank you, Commissioner Buck, for participating in our meetings and yielding your time to help support us in a process that's blazing the way for other districts around Lane County that are going to face some of these same challenges. So on behalf of our organization that's about to exist here shortly, we'd like to say thank you, and thank you for your efforts and your support.
Thank you, Chief Smith. Brian White will be followed by Aaron Donnelly.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Brian White with Sanapac. I'd like to speak briefly about an item that seems to have arisen lately. That's the potential cost of siting a new landfill or the cost of moving waste 70 years from now. I just believe it should be said that any discussion or numbers presented about this topic are incredibly speculative at this point. I'll give you one example. Right now, we can truck waste to the Juneau facility in Toledo, Oregon. Our total cost, including trucking and disposal, is equal to or less than the tip fees to take this waste to Short Mountain currently. Lane County created a study that showed it was also more environmentally beneficial to truck this waste to Juneau because the facility is able to divert around 50% of the waste by volume. This is today. The year is 2023, as we all know. With today's trucks, I can't imagine what kind of fuel source trucks 70 years from now will be running on. When we are talking about 70 years from now, we're talking about the year 2093, just for reference, 2093. Specifically, when we were talking about saving 20 years of landfill life, we're talking about the years 2093 to 2113. Legislation requirements on manufacturers to be responsible for the recyclability of products will almost certainly come and continue. Mattress take-back legislation kicks in next year. Plastic legislation, much like Mr. Miller just spoke about with the Recycling Modernization Act. The year after that, California is already requiring residential food waste collection throughout the state, which, being the good stewards that we are in this county, we are also doing. Just last week, to talk about some additional technology. Just last week, we set up a meeting with a company that uses AI technology cameras to identify recycling contamination piece by piece as it falls out of the can into the truck. The truth is, the waste and recycling sector is developing very rapidly.
Public comment.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. White. Aaron Donnelly will be followed by Steve Pelroy.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Aaron Donnelly. I've been with Sanapac for over 16 years. I've lived in Crestwell and been in Lane County for the last 27 years. I sit on the board of the Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association and the Legislative Committee of the Association of Oregon Recyclers. just to tie up what Brian, I think, was trying to say is that we're not looking to try and kick the can of sustainability down the road. We're just trying to be realistic about the total costs of waste management in the year 2093 and what that will likely look like. There are some issues that I think should be highlighted. The IMRF will not change what you can put in your recycle can. You'll be able to put more items into your recycle can in 2025, but that is because of the Recycling Modernization Act. The statewide list of what goes into the recycle bin will be regulated and cannot increase or decrease from that list locally. The IMRF would change nothing that can go into your recycle can. I read on a slide that is being presented later the term eliminating bin confusion. I don't know what that is referring to exactly, but I hope it doesn't mean a tacit encouragement of residents to not pay as close attention to recycling because this facility will try to capture the material. If so, that is a very ill-advised road to go down. Right now, the majority of the recycling in the area goes to IP in Springfield and Garden Services in Salem. With the IMRF, I believe the vast majority of recyclables, once sorted, will likely end up in the same facilities they do now. On the 88,000 tons of CO2 emissions reduced, I do have some specific questions on that, asking if it is net of the activity that's happening now, but that I'll email you. Finally, I see this question being asked, and that is, what if we wait? I would just like to make it clear, the facility is not our only option or solution. It is actually a very rare choice for communities to make, and even rarer for communities our size. These types of facilities are viewed by many in the industry as risky and prone to underperforming, including the very consultant Lane County hired to do the initial feasibility study. There are many alternatives to this facility, including using existing infrastructure.
Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. Steve Pelroy will be followed by Gary and Sally Hawkins.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Steve Pelroy. Here to talk about the IMRF. So the diversion rate in Lane County is already around 50%, which is pretty high. I'm the general manager of Ecosystems. We're a rural garbage company. I would say the haulers are mostly responsible for the diversion rate as it is right now. We provide recycling and trash for rural Lane County, places that have never had it before. A lot of times we're the first garbage service they've ever had. So it's important that we keep the diversion rates where they're at or higher by capturing that recycling before it gets to the landfill. I mean, it's one thing to sort it out of contamination, frankly, but it's more important that we are educated about recycling and work to get it before it even gets there. Talking to the haulers is free. You guys can always contact us and figure out ways to increase recycling and diversion rates. Let's see here. We want to keep our rates low, especially for our rural communities, because they are, a lot of them are on fixed incomes and don't have access to a recycling center or garbage centers, transfer sites like most other communities have. And we would like to continue to do that. The only problem is that this will force our hand to raise our rates, and that will limit access to people to recycle in these rural communities. And that will eventually lower our diversion rate, and then we'll have to pull it out of an IMRF. That just doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pelroy. Gary and Sally Hawkins will be followed by Michael Donahue.
Lifetime residents of Eugene, we're here to speak as an end consumer for this project and as a multi-generational family home. We house a daughter and a grandson that can't afford public housing. Can't afford housing. She's a medical professional and she's caught in between not making enough money to afford her own residence and not making too little money to afford public assistance. So we house them in our home, and to raise taxes and not address other issues and rates for things where we are retired individuals, we don't have the opportunity to adjust our income, to work overtime, to work longer, to do more. can't withstand the continued inflation. And there's a entire community that cannot. So I don't support.
Thank you. Michael Donahue is the last person signed up in Harris Hall. After Michael Donahue, we'll go to the online queue. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Donahue. I live in Lane County, long-term resident. I'm an EPUD customer. I'm also the Vice President of Sales and Operations for Far West Steel. We got 2 locations in Springfield, one in Glenwood, one in Game Farm, and one in Eugene. So to make it short, because I know we're limited, there are some really great organizations speaking today, highly respected, and I think it's critical that everyone take a look at their opinions and weigh these carefully. I want to make it clear that I'm supporting the iMRF project. I think it's very critical from a business point of view, and I'm speaking about the economic impact. From a lasting impact, the jobs that would be created through that facility and into the future are family wage jobs that not only could we keep our employees busy, but we could hire additional employees, and those are engineers, programmers, welders, machine operators, quality techs, CDL drivers, and that's just our company. And so the opportunity is an amplifier for job growth as those jobs circle back into the community and drive economic engine. From a personal point of view, my family's been in this county for over 100 years. One of my kids is a 5th-generation Duck, so I'm proud to be a Lane County resident. I love it. There's some good and bad with the county. But when projects like this come around, it's exciting for the future, and sometimes they're with controversy. Riverbend Hospital, it's a hospital for the future. The Knight Science Research Center, great opportunity. Hayward Field, those are the shiny things that we take, guests around the county when they come visit to show them things. I don't know if we'll take them to the iMRF because it's on the back end, but it is equally as important. It's an anchor in the urban mining waste recovery industry, and we'd be excited to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Mr. Donahue was the last person signed up in Harris Hall. After the online queue, I'll look around Harris Hall to see if anyone else wishes to testify. At this point, Ms. Jones, can you handle the online queue, please?
Thank you, Chair Farr.
I understand we have four people signed up. Thank you.
Pardon me, Chair Farr?
I understand we have 4 people signed up or did, but please continue.
At this time, I'm going to ask people to raise their hands. If you have signed up for public testimony and wish to present now, please raise your virtual hand, and I will call upon you in the order your hands are raised. If I do not see your hand raised, I will not be calling upon you. At this time, I see one hand up. Deborah McGee, I will unmute your microphone, and if you would like to be on camera, please let me know, and I will change you over to a camera mode. Deborah, your microphone is self-muted. There you go. Would you like to be on camera?
Yes, please.
One moment. You will see a button come up asking you to accept the move to panelist, and then you will unmute your camera. And I see there your camera is still muted, Deborah, so if you unmute, there you go. And we will begin your public comment.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to comment this morning. I am Deborah McGee. I've lived in rural West Eugene for over 40 years. For the last 11 years, I've been a community organizer, and I'm speaking this afternoon on behalf of over 1,000 of your constituents and community members who support the environmental work of 350 Eugene. I know you are informed and paying attention, so you know that we are in an environmental crisis. Even OPB is talking about the crisis of insects disappearing. And while most folks don't like bugs, we know that insects are the foundation of the circle of biodiversity on the planet. I love Oregon rains, but due to ocean currents changing, due to ocean heating, the Gulf Stream is affected, and we just experienced an atmospheric river. We had water running down our stovepipe into our house due to strong winds and pelting rain. Surely you and your families are also seeing and experiencing environmental changes. That is why, when you have an opportunity to address the greenhouse gas emissions that are being pumped into our collective atmosphere, you have a moral and ethical duty to do the right thing. I believe you've heard some misinformation about this project because people don't want to pay the financial cost of this change. But the data says that while it costs money to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the costs will be much, much higher later. Please support the proposed solid waste diversion facility. It would significantly reduce methane from Short Mountain landfill by processing food waste. It's time to get serious about the serious problem of climate heating. Do it for the sake of your grandchildren. Your leadership is appreciated, and Lane County can be a leader in our state. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. I do have another hand that was raised, Harry Sanger. Harry, I will unmute your microphone, and please let me know if you'd like to be on camera. You are unmuted. Would you like to be on camera?
No, thank you.
Okay, I will begin your timer, and you may begin your public comment.
All right. Good morning, Lane County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I think we've heard a lot from both the pros and cons on the IMERF facility today. My biggest concern is that we haven't had adequate public input, and there is concern over the facility. I would ask you to listen to those who ask you to give this more time, and that now is not the right time to proceed with this facility. We heard about environmental impact. I don't know how many of you live in Eugene, but I have food waste in my compost that we use every day. We already divert our waste, and the current system seems to work adequately. We're talking several decades into the future where that would become inadequate. And given the current environmental and economic climate, there are serious economic concerns in our community. People are struggling to find affordable housing. Our gas prices have gone up. Our food prices have gone up. Please don't take this opportunity to make our waste prices go up as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. At this time, I do not see any additional hands raised. I will offer one more moment to raise your hand if you'd like to give public comment. Chair Farr, I do not see any hands going up, so I'll return to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. At this time, I'll look around Harrisol. Does anyone else wish to address the Board of County Commissioners? If so, please step forward to the mic, identify yourself for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak once you identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Victoria Doyle, and I'm here as a private citizen from the city of Springfield. And I think you've heard a lot of the pros and cons on the IMERF. I'm here. I'm not going to regurgitate some of my concerns that I've heard already, but I'm here to talk to you as a private citizen. And my concern is the lack of communication that we've had with the private individuals in our community. I think that when you look at how many people have spoken today, you know that there's a lot of businesses out here, but how many of us are actual private citizens? That should say something to you about how much the public actually knows about this project. And so many times when there are projects like this happen, we feel like it's Eugene that makes the decision. We feel as Springfield, Florence, Cresswell, Cottage Grove, we feel like these decisions are being done to us rather than for us. And so my feeling is that I understand that there are time constraints with money and that kind of thing. I've been listening to this project all along, but I think that when we do this and we go forward without really engaging the public and then it just sort of happens to them, it breeds a distrust with our government, and that's not what we want. I don't think there's anything nefarious going on, but people will, and it's frustrating. And so I'm asking you that if you just hold off on this, I know there's reasons not to, but we need to engage the community more. When I reached out to different people in my community, they didn't know anything about this, right? And I think that when it's going to affect their pocketbooks, and like a lot of people have said, with what's happening in the world today with the costs and everything, even if it seems insignificant or that it's for the greater good or all of those things, if I haven't been told about it, then I'm not going to accept it the way that we want. So if we're going to do this type of project, we want buy-in. We want people to participate in it and to feel like that they had a say, whether they get it or not. So I thank you so much for your time, and happy birthday.
Thank you, Councilor Doyle. Anyone else in Harris Hall wish to address the Board of County Commissioners? How'd you know it was my birthday? I'm kidding. Anyone else in Harris Hall? This concludes public testimony, and we'll move along to the next item on the agenda, which is a response and/or remonstrances from the Board of Commissioners. I'll look to the board. Commissioner Lovell.
I guess it's my turn to lead off. I'll take the brunt off of Commissioner Buck at this time, at this meeting. Again, hey, thank you for coming to testify. This was the first time in almost a year of being in office that I saw a line of public people out the door, which always warms my heart. So it takes a lot of time for you to come here, and I appreciate your time that you've taken off work and on your retirement and your lives. And I think, obviously, I think, Victoria, you said a lot that kind of summarized very aproposly what has been going on in today's public session about the pros and cons. But I think what you said most that I want to bring back to just the public attention is that when the public at large doesn't know what's going on, it breeds distrust. And I think that's something that we as elected officials, at least now, myself being new here, I want to bridge that gap of trust with the public. I want them to be able to come to me with an issue that they have freely and unabashedly and in their rights as public citizens to express themselves and to do so expecting that I'm going to work for them, because that's what I do. So I want to just tell you that I think was a summation of what you guys are saying today, all of the people that came to testify. We hear what you're saying. All of us commissioners, I believe, are doing a very deep dive in these issues. It's not something we take lightly. And I appreciate many of the details that you bring out that warrant me to go back and look at details more thoroughly so that I can represent the people who elected me to represent them. So I want to thank you for that. Secondly, I just want to make an announcement. The 72nd annual Springfield Parade happened this last Saturday, and lo and behold, the gods of heaven didn't dump that atmospheric river on us. We had about a 3-hour gap of no rain, got the parade in, and then afterwards it deluged all of us that were still standing in the streets. But what a wonderful community event. I love my town, Springfield, and I'm so honored to be a part of representing them and who they are as a community. So thank you, Springfield, for the parade.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Further comments from the board? Vice Chair Trigger. Okay, Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate everybody who came in today. I know many of you work, and this is not the ideal time for you to come and speak, but nevertheless, I appreciate it. I'm going to hold my comments regarding the IMRF until that item later in our agenda, but I did want to call out one, which was Keith Baskett regarding the McKenzie and a potential camp that's having issues with the flooding that's occurring up there in some areas. So I think he left here today, but if he hears this, I'm happy to chat more, because I know 2 minutes is not a lot of time to speak, and to call me personally, and I'll see how I can be of any assistance in ensuring that those waters are clean and people are healthy and they're provided services that are available. And I also wanted to thank Chief Smith for coming and the board, my colleagues, for their assistance in moving forward the Goshen Pleasant Hill collective. I know it's not technically a merger, but it feels like a merger. And that is a big win for those two communities. It is a passion of mine to help serve our fire districts in any way possible. And I continue to do that work in partnership with them and the county staff. So thank you for coming. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Commissioner Senega.
Thanks, everybody, for showing up, and I see Tiffany just left in the nick of time, but I wanted to clarify that flow control is now on the table. She stated that it wasn't, but it is now, and that's part of the problem I have with this whole project is it's the facts and the numbers are ever changing. So, I mean, with a lot of it was said today, maybe we need to wait, maybe we need to table this thing until these numbers are solidified. Charles and the EPUD group, thanks for coming. I've thought about you guys a lot with, you do a great job of capturing the methane currently. I think, and you guys are always looking to advance how you're doing it. And I know that power is used to knock down the peak power points, which we all know are the most expensive. And so your customers are actually going to get hit twice because their garbage rates are going to go up. Well, with that, their electric rates are gonna go up. So that's something that really hasn't been talked about, and, you know, I feel that you guys need a seat at the stakeholders table as well, and to get into some more of this discussion. So I'd like to see that happen. Bridget, I agree that the timing on this is terrible. I think people want to hold on to their money right now. We've talked about all the expenses going up, fuel's going up, tires going up, wages are going up. All these haulers are having to deal with this on top of these extra rate increases. I mean, these are big numbers, and this is something that we really, really need to look into. We heard from Gary and Sally with your kids. I'm hearing this all day long, that we're being told it's a small increase, but what's a small increase to you is different to someone else. And we need to take these decisions very serious. I've got a couple more, but I just kind of want to end on a, see Keith left, I wanted to talk about the McKenzie River. I drove down there Sunday and I saw exactly what he was talking about, so maybe I can help get you in touch with Keith. Happy note ending, Chief Smith, great job. And I would like to thank you and your team and your crew for the amount of hard work you guys put into making sure this happened. So this is a big deal. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some of your time to be here. It's really important, and we're happy to see you all. I will reserve comments on the IMRF project until that is up on our agenda, but I did listen to and take notes on all of the public comment. I usually say I read every email that comes in on a topic, but I have to say on this one, I have managed to at least skim for the highlights and have not been able to read every word of every message, because there've been a lot of them very late in the game, and I reserve most of my time for studying the materials for the meeting. So, but I do note and appreciate all of the input on the topic. It's a big decision. I think he left, I'm looking for his name, Steve Olivier, but if you have a zoning or land use issue, the best thing to do is email your commissioner or the group of us, and we can put you in touch with staff to get the ball rolling on understanding what the issues are there, at least as a first pass, just to answer your question about how do you proceed. And the last thing I will say for this, for remonstrance, also wanting to end on a high note, I had the absolute honor and privilege and joy yesterday to sit on a panel with some partners from the City of Eugene. There's an organization called MIUSA, Mobility International USA, that works cross-culturally and internationally to learn from other countries about disability access. And I want to greatly appreciate Carla at Developmental Disabilities here at Lane County and her team, Brooke and Tad, for taking time to brief me and support me in being prepared for that conference panel that I participated on. This was a high-level delegation of government officials from Vietnam who were visiting here to learn about what we do about accessibility for folks with intellectual and physical disabilities, particularly what government's role is in creating more accessible communities through policy and environmental design. And it was a real experience to have real-time translation happening and be in this room full of high-level government delegation from Vietnam, and I was very proud to be able to represent and talk about all the great work that we do here in Lane County with the services that we deliver, as well as all the great policy work that we have the opportunity to do with our state and federal officials to make that work possible. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. I'll just take a couple of minutes, and as other commissioners, I'll talk more about IMRF and the comments at the regular item this afternoon. Thanks for being here this morning, and thanks to the folks from IP, Mr. Pearson, to you for giving me a tour of IP last Friday. Very eye-opening. Thank you. Also, to Mr. Olivier, you're not here, you're not listening, but what Commissioner Vice Chair Trieger said, we'll follow through on that and ask you to continue to provide information regarding your project. Then Mr. Baskett's not here, and Ryan Seneca, you responded to Mr. Baskett. Steve Mokraski, I've been working with people who have interest in that encampment that's happening underneath I-5. Something we really need to bear close attention to right now. It's divided into two parts. One part is on county property, which is parks land. The other part is on private property, which is the intake from Muddy Creek, which is an irrigation system, a large, extensive, I think 100-year-old irrigation system. There is a fence in between the two. We need to address both separately. The county is addressing in January regarding the encampment on the public side, but the private side remains an issue. And that's something that I'll talk to you a little bit more about. We don't need to discuss it today at this meeting, but the sheriff is completely involved in it, and I have spoken with folks from parks about it. So that's something we will be moving forward, because it really is, you know, when the river rises, anything on the banks goes downstream, and we're seeing that happen at this moment in time. And then finally, I'll mention this, I'll talk more about this. On Friday, I sat on a wonderful panel at City Club with Craig Sproles, the superintendent of schools for Bethel, and Ty Pruitt-Zimmerman, who is the chair of the Active Bethel Citizens Community Group. The key there is Bethel. I live in Bethel. My family's been there for a long, long time. Our kids are all graduates of Willamette High School. And we had a chance to talk to City Club and to the world, and you can listen to this on KLCC today, about how great a place Bethel is. We love Bethel. More on that later. So with that, anything further from the board? Thank you very much. And thanks for your testimony this morning. Keep an eye on this afternoon's agenda. We'll move along to our consent calendar. If you're following with us, you'll notice there are a number of items on the consent calendar. They'll be passed with a single motion. Any item that would have required separate discussion would have been pulled from the consent calendar. All these items will be considered by a single motion. Do we have a motion, Vice Chair Trieger?
Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar as published for Tuesday, December 5th, 2023.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck, the December 5th consent calendar. Discussion to the motion. I'm seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And we'll move down the agenda to item 6A, Mr. Mokrajski, which is a first reading and setting the second reading and public hearing on Ordinance 2309 in the matter of amending Lane Code Chapter 2 to create consistency with the Lane Manual and current practices as relates to the Assistant County Administrator classification and delegation of authority to the Fair Board to adopt a separate personnel administration system. And we do have a panel with us today, which is headed by our Human Resource Director, Alana Holmes. Mr. Mokrajski, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, this is a cleanup item, and I'll turn it over to Alana Holmes and Eliza to walk you through it.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Good morning. This is a follow-up and cleanup based on some other board activity that we held this past summer, and Eliza has done the work on this project, so I'm going to turn it over to her to walk through the item, and then an opportunity certainly for you to ask any questions before moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll remind the board this is a first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Farr and Commissioners. The item before you today is a first reading and setting of a public hearing for Ordinance Number 23-09. Ordinance Number 23-09 will modify Sections 2.010.005, 2.020.005, and 2.020.010 of the Lane Code in order to remove out-of-date language within the code to create consistency with the Lane Manual and current practices. The proposed changes are cleanup items and do not make changes to any current practices or policies. The board is being asked to remove the Assistant County Administrator classification from the list of classifications in Section 2.010.005, where the Board of Commissioners directly provides performance evaluations. The Assistant County Administrator classification was originally created in 2007 during a transition in the County Administrator role and reported directly to the board at that time. However, the position was only filled for 2 months and has not been used again until the summer of 2023. In 2017, the board amended the Lane Manual to specify the Assistant County Administrator would be appointed by the County Administrator rather than the Board of Commissioners. And in 2018, the board amended the Lane Manual to specify that the Board of Commissioners had 3 direct reports: the County Administrator, the County Council, and the Performance Auditor. Removing the language that specifies that the board completes performance evaluations for the Assistant County Administrator is consistent with the intent of the 2017 and 2018 Lane Manual amendments, since it would be unusual for the board to conduct performance evaluations for an employee that does not directly report to them. The second change that is being requested to sections 2.020.005 and 2.020.005 1010 removes language that delegates authority to the Lane County Fair Board to adopt a separate personnel administration system for employees at the Lane County Fairgrounds, including separate classification plans, compensation plans, and personnel rules. The board initially delegated this authority to the Fair Board in 1998, reserved the right to revoke that delegation at any time. The board revoked the delegation of authority to the Fair Board in 2008, and the employees at the fairground were subsequently assimilated into the county's personnel administration systems. Removing from the code the reference to the delegation of authority to the Fair Board, which has since been revoked, reduces the chance for confusion about which body currently holds those authorities. We recommend that the board set a second reading and public hearing on these changes for January 23rd, 2024 at 1:30 p.m. time certain. And thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kaczynski, for a good explanation. I have a quick question before I look to the board. This is an amendment to Lane Code, and amendments to the code actually require an ordinance, Mr. Mokraski, is that correct? That's correct, and that's why we're moving forward with this as a first reading and continuing with an ordinance. Now it refers to the Lane Manual. What happens, how do we amend the Lane Manual?
Yeah, board order, so it's still a board action, but it's a board order, so it just requires one meeting and one vote of the board.
So the difference is the Lane Code is a more strident document in that it requires an actual ordinance, which includes a public process. A board order can, but doesn't necessarily include a public process. It happens through action of the board without ordinance.
Correct. A board order still has to be approved by the board in a public meeting. It has to be noted, but it doesn't require the two readings and the noticing that's required with an ordinance.
Thank you. And then there's another document. There's the code, the Lane Manual, and the APM. How do we amend the APM?
The APM stands for the Administrative Procedures Manual, and that is sort of the day-to-day operational procedures of the organization. That is changed by the action of the county administrator.
So we have three levels of formality on the three different documents that we operate by. And these are the documents we look to whenever we're determining how we conduct business, how we move forward with business. So the APM is by action of the administration. The manual is by a board order in a public meeting. And then the most formal of all is the code. Well, the most formal is the charter, but the most formal that we're talking about today is the code, which requires an ordinance and the public process that we're starting today with the first reading. Very good. That's clear to me now. Thank you. So I'll look to the board. Any questions or comments? I see none. Then Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move to approve the first reading and set the second reading and public hearing for January 23rd, 2024 at a 1:30 p.m. time certain on this item.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Lovell. First reading and setting the second reading and public hearing on Ordinance 2309 with a date certain. Discussion to the motion? I see no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We had a fun meeting this morning. I love your graphic. I'll say that out loud. That's I want to see the larger picture of that. So.
Chair, I'll work on that.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Mokraski will move along to item 7A, which is order 20 under County Administration, which is order 23-120505, in the matter of approving allocations totaling $542,021 to the Rural Tourism Marketing Programs (RTMP) projects in the cities of Coburg, Cottage Grove, Cresswell, Dune City, Florence, Junction City, Lowell, Oak Ridge, Bonita, and Westford. And Mr. Mokraski, I'll allow you to introduce the panel just after I mention that the logos of all of those communities are right in front of us here at the Board of County Commissioners. So, Mr. Mokraski.
Yeah, I love being able to not only stare at your wonderful faces on Tuesday, but also at the logos of all of our cities in Lane County. So Jenna Kuzmano is here. Jenna's our Community and Economic Development Management Analyst. And this is also, I would say, a cleanup item, given some changes in how these resources now flow to us. So Jenna, you want to walk the board through?
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, Commissioners. I'm here today to request approval of the 2024 Rural Tourism Marketing Program allocations, also known as the RTMP, totaling $542,000 $542,021 for the cities of Coburg, Cottage Grove, Cresswell, Dune City, Florence, Junction City, Lowell, Oak Ridge, Veneta, and Westford. Now, you typically see this item each year on the consent calendar. However, in January 2023, administration and collection of the county's transient lodging tax moved from the city of Eugene to the Oregon Department of Revenue. And this caused some changes in the reporting, which is why I'm before you today. The Rural Tourism Marketing Program funds are generated from the transient lodging tax charged on overnight stays at short-term rentals, including but not limited to hotels, homes, and/or campgrounds, and are used for programs that will generate more overnight stays. The county's distribution of the funds is recommended in accordance with Lane Code, with 10% of the county's portion of lodging tax revenue to be used for tourism marketing of the areas outside the urban growth boundaries of the cities of Eugene and Springfield. The Lane County Rural Tourism Marketing Program focuses on maximizing attraction of visitors to rural communities, the length of stay by visitors, county-wide visitation, and return visits to rural Lane County communities. Monies distributed to the jurisdictions must comply with this criteria. Annual revenues for the RTMP portion of the county's transient lodging tax are approved for distribution at the beginning of each calendar year and based upon prior fiscal year's tax receipts. The county authorizes distribution of RTMP funds directly to the 10 incorporated rural cities as mentioned. The unincorporated Mackenzie River area also receives a portion of these funds following a request for proposals. This RFP for those funds will be released following board action on today's item. As I mentioned earlier, administration and collection of the county's transient lodging tax moved from the city of Eugene to the Oregon Department of Revenue in January 2023. The data and monies the county has received from the state has been delayed and far less detailed than what we previously received from the city. As a result, staff had 6 months of data from the city of Eugene for the period of July 2022 through December 2022 that did not align with the reporting from the state, making it difficult to calculate the RTMP allocations based on prior practice. To avoid further delay of RTMP funds to the rural cities, staff determined a total allocation amount based on the current balance of the rural tourism funds. As previous allocations to the rural cities were based on a 5-year rolling average and other calculated calculations, the county fund has built up more reserve than necessary to manage the program. Moving forward, staff endeavors to transfer the funds received each year directly to rural cities based on a base amount plus their proportional contributions, rather than using a 5-year rolling average of tax receipts. While this approach can be a little bit more volatile in amounts paid out each year, it will result in making sure the funds generated are distributed as soon as possible to the rural communities. So what this pie chart is showing you in a very small fashion is the proposed allocations for the 2024 funding, and showing Florence obviously with a very large slice of the pie, but that's also based proportionally on the receipts that they brought in directly. Ta-da.
And I will say, Jenna, that we can see it on our screen here, but for the people who are watching online, thank you. Great, thanks.
So these proportions are in alignment with the 5-year rolling averages that each jurisdiction did contribute to the transient lodging tax. And then this chart here shows the past 5 years of distribution. So the total RTMP distribution recommended this year is $600,000 based on the prior year funds currently available. This amount is significantly larger than in recent years. As you'll see, in 2023, we distributed just over $354,000 compared to our proposed amount of $600,000 this year. So this larger amount is an effort to distribute the majority of the current higher reserve that we have on hand in the rural tourism funds. and allow the rural cities to build up their own reserves if they wish to protect themselves against decreases in annual tax receipts rather than have the county bear that responsibility. And we also feel that this will be a more transparent process in reflecting the funds that we receive each year and that percentage that directly is going to be going out to the rural communities. The formula for distribution of RTMP funds, other than the determination of the total distribution amount, that $600,000 that I referenced, we use the same process as we used in past years. Staff will again review the allocation used along with the data available from the Oregon Department of Revenue prior to next year's allocation recommendations and report back on any recommended changes at that time. The distribution formula includes a base amount of $19,091 for each community and the balance of funds distributed based on receipts in each zone. So within your board packet is a copy of the RTMP collection and allocation spreadsheet. I haven't included it in the slides here because it's fairly complicated and burdensome. So you're more than welcome to look through that. But that's basically how past years were calculated. And again, we've used that same process. The only difference is we have gone ahead and set an amount based on the reserve funds available, and then made calculations based on that amount. So that is all I have for you today. I am willing to open it up for discussion and questions, Chair Farr.
Excellent. Well, thank you. This is good news to the rural communities that we're going to even out the distribution. I know that we've got a blip in time when the gathering and allocation switched from the city of Eugene to the state. Can somebody tell me whose decision was it to switch from the city of Eugene to the state?
It was the cities. I believe they had staffing change, that the staff person who had been responsible for doing the transient lodging tax administration retired, and rather than hiring someone, they opted to not continue with.
So this was the city of Eugene that chose to go the different route, and we're having a little bit of a, can I say it's a little bit of a scramble to kind of balance things and make it sure so that these communities in front of us and other distribution of the TRT funds is more uniform and less delayed.
Correct, and so this is kind of a transitional year moving forward. We're hoping to align the data so it will be similar to everything that we've seen in years past. The difficulty was getting down to the rural city specific data from the state. There was not a lot of direct alignment, so we couldn't really do that, which is why this allocation formula is based only on that 6 months of data that we received from the city of Eugene. Based on the recommendations from our budget manager, Christine Moody, we annualized that amount, so simply doubling that 6 months to reflect a year's receipt and calculate these proportional allocations.
And don't get this next comment wrong, but I'm sure the city of Eugene gave us plenty of notice that this was going to happen. That's okay. We don't need to go into detail on the response.
I don't recall that transition being, it was an understandable change that was made.
Thank you.
And clearly, the state also administers and reports things out differently than the city does. So a lot of this is really just trying to get into an alignment with how we can figure this out moving forward based on what they're able to provide us. And so part of that will probably be discussions back and forth with the state to get more detailed information moving forward, which I know Traveling County would appreciate as well.
Absolutely. And after this year, it'll be a smoother transition, and people will not notice any differences after this, after we address things.
That's the hope, but I'll certainly be back before you to talk about what that may look like.
We all hope the same. Discussion from the board, questions or comments? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation, and maybe this is answered in the packet, so forgive me, but it's my understanding the restructuring of the allocation is administrative, internal, doesn't require a board order. It is because we're allocating dollars that it needs a board order. But the total on the order is different from the total. The total on the order is $542,021, and the chart shows $600,000.
Apologies. So that balance is the remainder for the McKenzie River area. So that will be coming back, and depending on how today's discussion goes, that would be simply on your consent calendar as in years past, but it would just be allocating that remaining amount based on the submissions received from the RFP process.
That makes sense. Thank you for that. That's all I have, Chair.
So the McKenzie is a bid process that we're going through, and once that's settled, that'll balance out at $600,000. Okay, thanks for pointing that out, Vice Chair Trieger. Further comment? No further comments, and Vice Chair Trieger.
Just see if one of my rural colleagues wants to make the motion. Commissioner.
I'll move. Well, I guess it doesn't matter whether it's rural or not rural. But I'll move approval of Order 23-12-05-05 as presented.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Buck and seconded by,
Sorry, dude. I was just going for efficiency.
by the very efficient Commissioner Laval. We have Order 23-12-05-05. Discussion to the motion. I see none, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Cusimano,
so much.
for being here today, and thank you for the ongoing good work. Next, then, we have a report. Item 7B on our agenda, a report from the legislative, it's a legislative committee update on Measure 110. We may drift into a few other areas, but predominantly on Measure 110. And Ms. Pokraski, I'll turn it over to you to introduce your panel, who we know very, very well.
Yes, Chair and Commissioners, Steve Adams, our Policy Director, and Alex Kyler, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. And I'll let, I think, Steve, did you want to say anything, or Alex, you probably take it away?
We're going to kick it off here. Okay. Thank you, Administrator Mokrahejski, and good morning, Commissioners. Alex Kyler, your Intergovernmental Relations Manager. So before you have a packet about what we're bringing forward here today, if you recall, I was last in front of you on September 26th with a report back from a late August legislative committee meeting. And during that, the report back meeting on the 26th of September, one of the changes that you made to the principles and priorities, the priorities and principles document, our legislative document that guides my work in Salem, was to support efforts to reform Measure 110. And during that meeting, I said, we don't really have a lot of details yet, but that we would be convening a group of staff, including elected officials, to talk about putting a little more detail around what support for Measure 110 reforms meant. At that point in time, I think the handwriting was on the wall that there was going to be, this was going to be a big topic for the upcoming session, but we really didn't have a good sense of what sort of proposals were being floated by stakeholder organizations. And in fact, 2 days after I reported to the board, 3 days maybe, September 29th, I think, was leadership in Salem announced the formation of a joint committee on addictions and community community action and recovery, I think, is the acronym, or is the name of the joint committee. And notably, Senator Brzezinski from our area is sitting on that committee. Long been a key person involved with the evolution of Measure 110, approved by the voters, into a legislative format that now is statutorily codified. So when we've now seen 3 meetings of that joint committee, including the most recent of which was yesterday. In the meantime, the other things that evolved were a total of actually 4 initiative petitions that were filed by a group out of Portland to really look at ways to reform Measure 110, 2 of which have now been withdrawn from that group, but 2 which still exist. And this group in Portland has basically said, look, legislature, we've got these initiative petitions. We're ready to seek placement on the ballot for one or both of them. But you have a real opportunity in front of you to actually provide meaningful reform during the February session of the legislature. And I think the legislature really took them up on that and said, yes, indeed, we do want to address this before something gets in front of the voters. And notably, the petitions which are described in your packet, as we call them C and D, there are 2 versions, the C version and the D version. They're really about recriminalization of possession of a controlled substance, for example, and and a few more reforms. But they're fairly heavy on the public safety side of the equation, for sure. After those petitions were filed with the Secretary of State's office, There were another significant proposal that was evolved by both the Association of District Attorneys, ODDA in Salem, Oregon District Attorneys Association, and then the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs of Police also came up and combined with the DAs. League of Oregon Cities has endorsed that proposal, and they've got about 14 key points that they make in their proposal. So that document is getting quite a bit of airtime as well. And people testified yesterday, for example, in Salem on, there were people talking about the initiative petitions that were filed, and there were people who were talking about the DA's association proposal. And so there's a lot going on here. Our observation at a staff level was that, we're not going to be the mover and the shaker on Measure 110 reform, but certainly we have some things going on in our county that are tangentially related to Measure 110 reform. And this would be a really good opportunity for us to lift up some of these issues and try to piggyback on Measure 110 reform. So things like stabilization center. There's a lot of talk about alternatives to jail and supervised treatment in the conversations that are occurring in Salem. Our stabilization center is a real example of that. And so what are some of the issues that we are already aware of with respect to stabilization center that we might be able to piggyback on to the Measure 110 conversations, which are going to happen for sure during the legislative session. The other thing is we've got a priority to go and work on the Community Corrections Act funding. Well, if they recriminalize some of these drugs, those people could be eligible for supervision under the Community Corrections Act. And what will that mean? So how do we ensure that our conversations around community supervision also dovetail with this effort? Now, what we did was we convened a group of staff, and you can see who those folks were in the packet. We had the Sheriff's Office, the DA's Office, Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services, Health and Human Services Department, and County Admin. And so we had 2 separate meetings of that group to really talk about the options on the table, and the path that we took forward was to create a written document. That's what we're calling the draft position paper on Measure 110 reform. But it involved trying to get buy-off from all those parties. And there's some pretty varied perspectives around this organization about what should happen with Measure 110. You can see at the end of that document on page 5, is a bulleted list of items that everybody agreed on. And it is this list that we're proposing to put into our priorities and principles document, very much akin to how we have done things in the past with that document with respect to, we had a bunch of, fairly specific legislative principles around the pandemic that we evolved when the pandemic was really happening, and there was a lot of activity at the legislature. We did a very similar thing around Holiday Farm Fire when, the Holiday Farm Fire recovery was just getting going, and we were going up to Salem with a lot of different requests, both on the policy and funding front. And so we had those pretty specific set of principles. This is no different. This is going to be just a set of principles in time that we work forward. And given the breadth of the organization, feels important for me to have fairly specific marching orders for what's going to happen in Salem. And so this is admittedly in the weeds, but I hope what I've just suggested gives you a little bit of context about why we did it this way, because of the varying sort of interests across the county, and if for nothing else, the nature of the short session, which is, as you know, very rapid. So we've got to be pretty concise with what we're trying to do here. It is the first time we've used sort of this white paper to create a set of principles to present to the board. but again, we needed something to make sure that all those stakeholders that we'd met with felt comfortable, and there were modifications made. So the one thing I did want to point out in this list of bullets, there's one that Steve and I have really tried to sort of massage to make as clear as possible. It's about halfway down, well, it's the fourth bullet from the bottom. And we wanted to make sure, we're talking about support legislation that enables burn funds, that's the Behavioral Health Resource Network funds, to be used to treat justice-involved Oregonians suffering from drug addiction. One of the things we experienced in Lane County was a burn that was proposed to treat only criminal justice-involved individuals that did not get funded by what's called the Oversight and Accountability Council because it didn't provide access to all Oregonians. So we really feel like as we move forward here, we do need something that if there is an applicant who says, I'm just focusing on that population, that it's eligible for funding. So the wording is a little, still sort of working on how that language can be more clear, but I wanted to point that out. Now, I will say before I take any questions, just wanted to go over a little bit of, some of this is going to be following the money. And if you recall, when voters approved Measure 110, essentially they took basically the marijuana tax as the basis for the funding for these the burn networks across the state of Oregon. And in spite of forecasts that occurred during session where we thought marijuana revenue across the state of Oregon was on a decline, in the most recent revenue forecast, marijuana revenue looks like it's still fairly healthy moving forward, about $300 million of marijuana tax revenue for the 23-25 biennium. The way that Measure 110 was written was that it basically said there'd be $11,250,000 that would always remain in the marijuana account, but anything above that would be peeled off and provided for Measure 110 resources. So we've got about, in the coming biennium, about $197 million statewide that will be spent on Measure 110 activities.
Say that number again, Alex.
$197 million.
197.
Yeah. And it amounts to about $29 million invested in Lane County thus far since the implementation of Measure 110. And so, and there's a really nice dashboard on the OHA website that shows the allocations to each county. But I bring it up because Measure 110 did have impacts for county operations. If you recall, Measure 91, which legalized marijuana, created pots of money that were to be allocated out of the marijuana tax, including a 10% pot for counties. So we saw quite a steep decline as a result of Measure 110 passage, where back in the 1921 biennium, right sort of when Measure 110 was approved by voters, counties were about to get $23.4 million. And in this biennium, that number is reduced down to $10 million. There were other dollars that are allocated just for prevention and treatment programming that that Measure 91 created that also saw a significant impact. So, for example, back in 1921, there was about $52 million for mental health, alcoholism, and drug services. Now, with the passage of Measure 110, that's down to about $40 million. So we still get some of these dollars, but just not as much.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So there is definitely a financial impact to Measure 110 for counties, and Chair Farr knows that during the 23 session, there was an attempt at doing sort of a reform of Measure 110. I characterize it as reform light. It was a good effort, but it really didn't. It happened during session, and there were some reforms made, but some better sort of coordination between burns and counties. But what we see moving forward is a is a real need for counties at the center of that conversation with the community mental health. We're already the mental health authority. That's a community mental health program. Right now, there's very little coordination between the CMHP and Burns. And that brings with it a number of problems. There's some reporting that has been lost, some data collection that, you know, even looking at the dashboards, you sort of have some questions about how the veracity of the data, I guess I would say. And so, you know, we really think that counties need to be more at the center of this conversation. And I think the other big piece that the group discussed had to do with funding and what we call the all-in model. It's a bullet on that last page. And I think at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Steve, who's, I think, got a better sense of how to describe that particular priority.
Chair Farr, Commissioners, thank you, Alex. Specifically to this point, I mean, I think that the behavioral health resource networks are essentially grants that are provided, allocated on a statewide basis by the Oversight and Accountability Council at the Oregon Health Authority. We note that there is a significant difference in the way that those resources are going out. We have 3 separate burns operating within Lane County. In other counties have multiple burns as well. We note that that's a pretty distinct difference between the way that operates and the way that Governor Kotek's all-in executive orders on the first day of her governorship. She signed 3 executive orders, as you know. She created kind of a multi-agency coordinations team, really, in focusing on the unhoused crisis. And so this really kind of draws from the HUD body of work and the continuum of care model in which a set of resources comes to a community level with accountability and in real oversight. There's a action plan that is developed. There are metrics that have to be hit in a specific kind of reporting happens, and a degree of coordination at the local level for organizations to understand what are the needs, where local government is working in concert with community-based organizations and other not-for-profit providers to really understand that this is the suite of needs that we have in our community. Here's the suite of actors that are able to provide that sort of care in a more coordinated fashion, and a more integrated kind of response happens, as opposed to others, you know, simply kind of a number of different entities competing for grants at the statewide level, where you're not necessarily getting coordinated care. So we would recommend that that as part of the process as members begin to work through potential reform legislation, whether it comes to fruit or not during the short session.
Mr. Chair, I don't think we have anything more to say other than, like I said, this last set of bullets is what would go into our priorities and principles document. These would be principles that we would work under. And there are, again, a few things here that I think we would really try to lift up to make sure that our members of our delegation and leadership on the Joint Committee know sort of how they integrate with some of the other issues that are going to be percolating this short session.
Well, we're seeing some motion, at least, and I really, personally, I appreciate the work that you're both putting into this to try to coordinate things. You know, the thing, what you said that, Alex, and I've got this quote here that I love to call on, counties need to be the center of the conversation. Well, we've been far from the center of the conversation. In fact, during those meetings with then Chair Noss, felt like we were being kind of pushed to the edges of the conversation. But I'm looking forward to a greater involvement, particularly as it concerns the people who are sent back for community supervision, for one thing, and the coordination between the Burns and CMHP and counties. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. What we're looking at is really the series of bullets that's on page 5 of the document that's in front of us. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. And I know we're a little short on time, and this is such an important and meaty topic, so I'm sure we'll be talking about it lots. But as the Chair said, we're really just being asked to make sure there isn't, as I understand it, there's nothing on this bulleted list on page 5 that we are uncomfortable with or in opposition to or need clarity before moving forward rather than taking it item by item, that it really is creating a framework. And we also all know that once you get in the building and the session is underway, it's very dynamic. So having so many bullets to work from actually provides for that kind of flexibility and nimbleness to hop from where is the energy, where's the momentum, where's the opportunity, not that we're going to get all of these things necessarily. In one go. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the framing. I want to say also on record, though I want us to be really careful. I'm not implying you did this, but the burns are doing really good and important and valuable work as they exist. It's just an opportunity to improve, right? Because as we know from most of our other work, upriver in recovery, in our public health work, it is those community-based organizations that are on the ground that are most trusted, and this very vulnerable population that they're working with will not enter into services or access these resources if it wasn't for those trusted relationships with those organizations, large and small. So I really just want to make sure we keep lifting up the value of the burns, and that it would be a value add to have them more integrated with us and with sharing data and make everybody's work more efficient, and have the data be more accurate and more robust and more useful to everyone. So I just really thought it was important to state that. And this is the challenge with ballot initiatives, right, is that they don't leave room for the nuance to the good or the bad, and there's a lot of nuance to this. So I do prefer keeping our efforts in the legislative process, keeping it informed, because the legislators are informed by their state administrative departments, leaders, and with input from local government. It gives us that opportunity, which, as you said so importantly, just helps keep the relationships and the communication open about all the game of whack-a-mole of where else does this show up or create opportunity to work on the bigger systems fixes. So I am very much supportive of this. I have a couple of specific questions about some bullets, but I can ask those sort of individually, and there's nothing that I need answered today before supporting this. But I am curious, just this all-in model, was that a concept that we sort of recognize and develop? Is that language that's going to be familiar to legislators to start talking about it that way as it relates to this work?
So, Chair Farr, Commissioner Trieger, Vice Chair Trieger, indeed, I think that language is recognizable within the Capitol, and certainly the implementation of the governor's executive orders has carried that moniker for some time, this all-in approach. And of course, our under Kate Budd's leadership, you'll recall that we received kudos for our action plan response very specifically. And so we believe that to be the case, and certainly elements of that were incorporated within House Bill 2001, which passed the legislature very quickly in this session, which implemented other components of the governor's executive order. I believe that was 2008, yes. Yeah.
Chair Farr and Commissioner Trieger, I will say that, to your comments about the burns, absolutely, they are playing an integral role around the state of Oregon. I will say that I think what I've heard from the legislators and the major stakeholders is that one of the things that I think will come out of the 24th session is that treatment will be elevated, access to treatment faster and more of it. And so that's sort of the broadish rubric we're operating under. The all-in funding model, I think, is something that's more of something that we will try to insert into the conversation. I'm not sure we'll be successful with it, but I think that to answer your question, yes, legislators are familiar with it. Commissioner Chair Farr, you're getting pretty much a regular monthly update at the LGAC, the Local Government Advisory Committee to OHA about all-in program implementation. And so, to the extent that it could serve as a model, I think we may get some traction with it. One of the things that the legislature will do is look at the funding and how these dollars are being allocated, and are they getting the outcomes that they expect? And thus far, this is an awkward situation. Here was a ballot measure that was really supported by the public. It hasn't been around for all that long, and yet we've got a lot of, there's a lot of politics at play right now. Even yesterday, right after the committee met, a press release was issued to say, we demand a special session, we should be repealing this thing. There are a number of counties who have called for repeal. So we're in a pretty interesting dynamic, and I think, again, what Lane County is trying to do is offer constructive, meaningful input into this situation, and hopefully, and I think we've built a reputation in Salem as being a broker of good ideas and good information, and this will really help for us to continue that model.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
And, you're helping Lane County maintain the high road in this, and our all-in, the efforts and the results of our all-in model are recognized and continue to receive what you call kudos throughout the state. Every time I hear about it, we're getting compliments. Now, if you ask Kate Budd about it, she says, well, we can do better. Well, she's always going to say that. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. So I support still being in the mix and trying to, give our recommendations on what kind of reform can potentially happen here. But you'd mentioned that we weren't necessarily the mover and the shaker in this particular statewide discussion. So I was curious who you thought those players were.
Chair Farr, Commissioner Buck, I think the people who are going to be leading that charge are the folks who have embraced this coalition that is the DA's Association, the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs of Police, and the League of Oregon Cities. The League, they have a suite of lobbyists. The sheriffs are represented by Kevin Campbell. He's a very skilled lobbyist in Salem. DAs are represented by Amanda Dalton. She's also highly skilled. And so in terms of my peers, those are the folks that I would be working with and sort of attempting to ensure, and I've already done some of that work to talk about the intersection with some of the work we've already been doing with Stabilization Center and Community Corrections Act to make sure that those folks understand, hey, there's a real opportunity here for us to get a kind of a bigger win to address some of the concerns that, sheriffs obviously have, chiefs obviously have, DAs obviously have with Community Corrections Act funding. And so really trying to make sure that people see the connective tissue between these things.
And do you think that from the way it's been presented, it seems to me that this might be one of the biggest topics at the upcoming short session, but I was wondering what other topics we're competing with.
Chair Farr, Commissioner Buck, I think it will be the biggest topic. The joint committee is chaired by Senator Kate Lieber. She's the majority leader on the Senate side. Representative Jason Krupp, who's the co-chair on the House side, is the chair of House Judiciary. So, we've got some pretty powerful folks on that committee. I think Community Corrections Act is something that will definitely be elevated. I think we're going to be in an interesting situation in terms of budgetary adjustments this year. You saw even this morning and yesterday, I think we learned about it, but a commitment for additional funds for ODOT. So this balance of sort of looking at the availability of money through the economic forecasts, the most recent December forecast was really pretty rosy. So I think, between budget, Measure 110, community corrections. Housing. Governor's always going to be, really pushing for additional housing investments. And housing, probably going to be part of this conversation as well. I mean, this notion of sort of, we talk about recriminalization here, but even the folks who, the folks who designed the initiative petitions are suggesting, hey, we want to make sure that there's an alternative to jail. And so there are a couple of different ideas around what they're sort of largely basing as jail deflection. And in a perfect world, it really would be that a police officer could bring somebody not to jail, but directly to a different kind of treatment facility. And at the end of that treatment, if successful, any charges that would have been brought would be expunged from the person's record. So even though those folks who are calling for recriminalization are suggesting to the legislature, you've got an opportunity to do some things that don't involve just returning people to sort of the old model. So I think it's a really interesting conversation, and whether the legislature can actually get it done in 24 is a question that I have. I've got a feeling they will do something, but I wouldn't be surprised for us to be sitting here again talking about the 25 session priorities, and still you're going to get a report back that, well, there's still work that needs to be done, and here's what's on the table now. So I think that's probably what we'll see.
I would venture to guarantee that. So, thank you, Commissioner Buck. And, you know, in the words of the Prince of Denmark, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. But, you know, I look at the makeup of the committee, and it's not Multnomah County centric or heavy. In fact, there are as many reps on the committee from Deschutes County as there are from Multnomah County. So I think we'll have this committee will give us a good, balanced approach. Looking forward to it. And having Senator Przansky on the committee is going to be an asset to us, most certainly. Further comments, or we're ready for a motion, Vice Chair Trieger?
Great, thank you, Chair. I will find my agenda. Chair, I move approval of Order 23-12-05-06 in the matter of adopting legislative principles and priorities related to Measure 110.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Order 23-12-05-06. Discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll keep a close eye on this work as it evolves. What a great team we have in Salem. Very good. Then, Ms. Mokrajewski, we'll move down to item C, which is announcements from you.
I don't have anything, but I have one, but I'm just going to save it to next week. You've got a tight meeting today, so unless you have questions, we can go into exec session.
Very good. Then with no further items for this morning's agenda, we will read into executive session. Following the sound of my gavel, we'll be in executive session in the BCC conference room, and we'll reconvene in the conference room at 11:05. It is now about 3 minutes until. The Board of Commissioners will meet in executive session to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602H, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decisions shall be made in executive session. We reserve the right to come back into public session should the need arise.